Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
Coming to you from Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida on Facebook Live. And we're also on Excluded TV. Excluded with the X, not the EX, just XCLUDED.TV. That is a new video streaming platform that is going to be a place where a lot of the content that your major social media folks don't want you to see, and they are going to ban from their site on the basis that it violates their community standards and stuff like that. When you can no longer talk on the major social media platforms, excluded.tv is a great place to get some of this content that you're not going to see anywhere else before too much longer. It's a very modest subscription fee, $30 a year, well worth it. You'll see the FAIRtax Guys every week here on FAIRtax Power Radio. Other great programs. Ward Scott has a show on there, so does John Martin and a few others as well. So Excluded TV, let's give them a little plug here, and well worth the $30 a year to do that.
It is, yep. It's a freedom of speech thing, folks.
It is.
So
well, we've got a special program here on FAIRtax Power Radio this time around. We encourage people to get a hold of us. Again, our email address, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. We encourage people to leave us comments on our Facebook page. We encourage people to, on our live programs, to leave comments while the programs are going on. This one's pre-recorded. But we do want to address something that came to us a couple of weeks ago from a lady named Cindy Mulvey. Now, let me be perfectly clear. Cindy is a FAIRtax supporter.
Right.
But she was relating to us some of the objections that her friends have raised to her when she is trying to tell people about the FAIRtax.
Right.
And so let's kind of go through what Cindy is bringing up, and then we've got a little PowerPoint presentation that will go through the answer to just about everything that she raises up. She says the first objection she gets, and pardon me for looking over here at the computer, says, the way I understand the FAIRtax is that everyone would pay the same percentage. That means a person who barely gets by living paycheck to paycheck has to pay the same percentage as a person who is wealthy, so wealthy he can buy a yacht as easily as a loaf of bread. That's not fair.
Well,
that is exactly right. That's not fair. That is the textbook definition of a regressive tax.
Right. The FAIRtax isn't like that. Well, let's say the FAIRtax has a mechanism that protects people against that. We've talked about this before, but this is going to be the subject of today's broadcast, okay?
Yeah, that's what we're going to get into, why the FAIRtax does not do that.
A normal sales tax is regressive, especially, the FAIRtax is hefty. It's a 23% tax. And if it were just a 23% sales tax, yeah, that would be very regressive. It would hurt the people that can least afford it. But we have this mechanism that the technical name for it is the family consumption allowance. All right, the nickname is the Prebate. It's called the Prebate because you get it at the beginning of the month, previous to your month's shoppings. And that is what makes the FAIRtax fair.
Okay, let's continue with Cindy's letter. It says, the system is broken. The only way to fix it is to look at the root cause of the problem. The root cause is way too much government. It's time to end the war of terror perpetrated on the Middle East by the U.S. government. It's time to end the war on people who do drugs. It's time to end corporate welfare and social welfare. Time to end all foreign aid and state aid. Time to end all the government agencies that don't fall inside the Constitution. Until then, you're just changing how they're stealing money from people. I don't think you're going to find too many folks that would disagree with the major premise that we've got too much government.
Yeah, but you're talking about spending issues, all right, what the government is spending and their priorities, okay? That's not what the FAIRtax addresses.
Yeah,
the FAIRtax is a revenue bill. It addresses how the government gets its money. That's it. And I've had this discussion with a number of people. We had a meeting here in Gainesville last week, and one guy was adamant. I said, Art, we only talk about how the government gets its money. Yes, spending issues and spending priorities are very serious issues, but they don't fall within the framework of the FAIRtax. The FAIRtax is a revenue bill. It determines how the government gets its money. And it makes it a heck of a lot better. We've, extolled the virtues of it before. So those other issues are important, but there's nothing that the FAIRtax can do about it.
There's not a lot we can do to deal with that part of Cindy's letter because, the how to spend the money or what to spend it on or what not to spend it on or how much to give to this program and how much to give there, that is a debate that has to happen. It continues to happen under the income tax. I mean, the Internal Revenue Service Code doesn't deal with how you spend the money. It just deals with generating it, and the FAIRtax will generate the same amount of money for the federal government. Now, it's not enough. They continue to spend more than they're bringing in, and that will continue to happen with the FAIRtax, no doubt. So there are other issues that the FAIRtax is just not going to raise. We'll raise the same amount of money for it, and then we'll have the debate on how to spend it and whether we're spending too much and how to cut back and whatnot, what have you. But this last paragraph in Cindy's letter is the one that's really the heart of the matter that we want to talk to about today on FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm glad to know about the prebate, but being above the poverty line does not mean that one is well off. There are millions of people above the poverty line who are barely making it. They do not qualify for government programs because they, quote, make too much money. One illness in the family can completely bankrupt them. The poverty line is hardly a good place to draw the line. The top 2% of the population has more combined income than the bottom 98. I don't know the statistics if you take out all that under the poverty line, but I'm fairly certain there is a wide gap. Now, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, the person who is making this objection does not really fully understand how this thing works. The prebate, as we're going to get into just a minute, is not only for people at the poverty line or below. This is not one of those, if you're above the poverty line, you don't qualify for it. The prebate is something that everyone gets. And we're going to illustrate here in just a few minutes how someone who is just barely above the poverty line, how they will do under the FAIRtax.
Yeah, it's a conceptual leap to get out of the income tax frame of mind. And because, I'm looking at Congress.gov here for all the proposals to change the tax code. Congress likes to use the tax code to manipulate all aspects of American life. We have read some of the crazy proposals that are in here. We should take probably an episode in the future and go through some of the weirdest ones.
1,546 of them at the moment.
They are using the tax code to manipulate life in America. We want a tax code that all it does is collect money for the government. That's it. Can't be used to steer you in a certain direction, determine what kind of light bulbs you want, what kind of toilets you want, what kind of programs, so forth. Right? We need a tax code that's simple. So let's get out of that discussion, okay? But for those people that live in a state that have a sales tax only and not an income tax, okay, you're partway there. What we need to do is take that on a national level and forget about all this other stuff. And, why are we dealing with people's incomes and so forth and their classes and so forth, all right? The income tax has created a nation of people who are obsessed with what other people make. Let's be concerned with our own family finances.
Okay, let's get into the thing that answering some of these things that Cindy's friends have put up to her. Go ahead, Gabe, roll the PowerPoint, if you will. And we want to talk about the FAIRtax prebate. Now, the FAIRtax prebate is the provision within the FAIRtax. Go ahead to the next one that makes the FAIRtax a fair tax.
Yeah,
that's all it is. In fact, when the FAIRtax was first created, it didn't have the name FAIRtax. I don't know if it had a name at all. It was just a concept that these businessmen in Houston put together, and they were describing it for someone, and they said, that's a fair tax. So, okay, then the prebate is what makes the FAIRtax a fair tax. So let's go on a little bit, but as we get going, let's talk a little bit about progressive versus regressive taxes. Now, a regressive tax, that is one that is not based on someone's ability to pay it.
Right.
A regressive tax, by definition, hurts lower income people more so than the rich. And a straight sales tax, Ron, as you mentioned earlier, they are regressive. Like if you got an 8% sales tax and you're going to charge that same 8% to Donald Trump as you do to somebody who's just barely getting by on Social Security, the rich guy can afford it, the poor guy can't. And there's a visual representation of what a regressive tax looks like. The rich man there on the left side has got a nice big pie, and the poor man on the right side has got a much smaller pie. And if you take the same size piece out of each pie relative to the size of the pie, you're going to leave the poor man with a lot less disposal, and especially if the poor guy needs just about everything he's got to get by. The rich man can have plenty left over after that piece is taken out, but you take that much out of the poor man's pie, and you have really hurt him a lot more so than you have hurt into the rich guy as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
That is a picture definition of what a regressive tax looks like.
Hey, and I want to give Bob credit for doing this PowerPoint, because as you'll see, I think this is the best description of the prebate that I've seen since I've been doing this. And I've been doing this about 9 years now. And the prebate sometimes is a little hard to get that concept across, especially when people are thinking about the income tax, when they're stuck in the income tax frame of mind. Mm-hmm. So I thank Bob for doing this PowerPoint.
All right, now a progressive tax, by other hand, a progressive tax is one that is based on one's ability to pay, and our little visual representation of what a progressive tax looks like. You take a much bigger piece out of the rich man's big pie than you take out of the poor man's small pie.
That's right.
Now, those particular slices, as they are drawn, are not representing any one particular thing. It was just illustrative of how you take a bigger piece out of the big pie and a smaller piece out of the small pie. And I say, if you're charging just a straight 8% sales tax, you can't do that. So the FAIRtax has something in there called the prebate. So if you would roll that to the next, again, it's what makes the FAIRtax a fair tax. And you use the term family consumption allowance a minute ago. Now, the family consumption allowance and the prebate are really not the same thing. The family consumption allowance is the number from which the prebate is calculated. The prebate is the actual rebate you get. The refund that you get on a monthly basis that either comes in a check or as a direct deposit into your checking account. But the family consumption allowance is kind of like the standard deduction. Since the FAIRtax tax is spending and not income, how much spending can you do without being subject to the tax? And that's the family consumption allowance. It varies from household size to household size. It is the federal poverty level for the given household size, which again varies by household size because it takes more to raise 6 kids than 1, you know.
Yeah.
Now, for 2018, the family consumption allowance, and this is the number we're going to use in our illustration, for a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 children, is $32,920. That family consumption allowance will be higher if you've got 2 adults and more kids. It will be lower if you're a single, fewer dependents to take care of. But what it is not an entitlement, folks. It is not based on income either. Every legal household, keyword legal there, household of the same size, gets the same family consumption allowance. The deal is, the philosophical design behind the FAIRtax, nobody, and that means nobody from somebody in Donald Trump's income bracket on down, nobody should have to pay federal taxes on what it costs to live. So everyone gets the same prebate based on their household size. Now, if you're rich enough not to want it, and you don't have to sign up for it if you don't want to.
Yeah, I suppose.
But you can. But again, it is not based on income. Every legal household of the same size gets the same family consumption allowance.
That's right.
Now, let's go ahead and take a look at how this is actually going to affect some folks. Ron, you go through the poor family for us, if you would.
Okay, let's get it up here. All right, now, poor family spending. Let's say that they're spending right at the poverty level. They're earning $32,920.
Doesn't matter how much they earn. It matters how much they spend.
Yeah,
And
right.
Real quickly, that is taxable spending. We've mentioned before that used goods are not taxed. But
That's right.
This is just retail purchases.
It's an important concept.
I do not recommend buying used groceries. That doesn't work real well. But so even the poor family is going to have to buy some stuff new.
Good safety point there, Bob.
But if they spend the $32,920, continue.
All right. So if they spend right at the poverty, this is a family of 4 again, mom and dad and 2 kids. And if they spend right at the poverty level, then they're paying the FAIRtax of $7,572, $7,572.
$32,920 is the family consumption allowance. $7,572 is the prebate. That's what you get back.
And then the prebate is, guess what? The same amount, $7,572. So their tax burden is 0, all right? If you're watching this, you can see what it is. The FAIRtax is really fair to the poor people, those people that are just getting by.
Yeah.
Effective tax rate is 0.
Someone spending right at the poverty level, they will pay $75.72 at the cash register. They will get back that much. They take absolutely nothing out of their pocket. Now, addressing this this thing that Cindy's letter said, well, wait a minute. The people that are slightly above the poverty level, they've got a problem. That's not fair. Let's look at a slightly better off family, say one that spends $40,000 a year. Again, this is the family of 4. That family will pay $9,200 in fair tax. Now, it's the same size household. They get the same prebate. But this slightly better off family that spends $40,000 rather than $32,900, they will have to take, where's the next number coming up, $1,628 out of their own pocket. See, they pay $9,200 at the cash register. They get $75.72 back in prebate, which means out of pocket they are paying $1,628 in fair tax out of their own pocket. And if you express that out of pocket expense as a percentage of their total spending, $1,628 is 4.07% of $40,000. So their effective out of pocket tax rate for this slightly better off family is they're taxed at 4.07%. And that's pretty cool to do when you think people say, well, the fair tax is a 23% sales tax. Well, but if you're at that spending level, your effective out-of-pocket rate, they're going to collect the 23% from you at the cash register. You get most of that back on prebate. You take 4.07% of your income or what you spent goes to the fair tax if you're just slightly better off above the poverty level like that. So scoot up now. Let's take a look at the middle-class family. There's something really cool about this middle-class family that we need to look at. Assume that they spend twice as much. Ron, take this one.
Okay. The middle-class family, let's say they're spending $80,000 a year. I don't think I've ever been in that situation. But anyways.
Yeah. How much is their fair tax?
The fair tax on that amount is $18,400.
Now, note that you've doubled the spending, you've doubled the amount of fair tax, because the rate is the same for everyone, regardless of how much you're spending.
And that's assuming they're spending $80,000 on new products,
new goods
and services and so forth. Or they'll be paying the fair tax on everything.
So the middle class family spends twice as much, they pay twice as much at the cash register, but they get the same
prebate because it's still a family of 4, mom and dad and 2 kids. They just are spending more.
Now your prebate covers less than half of your total tax bill.
That's right. So now their out of pocket is $10,828, or an effective tax rate of 13.54. Next one, Gabe.
You'll get there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Effective tax rate is 13.54. Notice how the more the group spends, more the family spends, the higher their effective tax rate is.
What people really need to check on this, the comparison between the slightly better off family and the middle class family, is you doubled the spending, you more than tripled the effective out-of-pocket tax rate. So if anybody questions the progressivity of the fair tax, just show them those 2 numbers.
That's right. Yep.
And that'll do it. So let's just, for the fun of it, take this all the way up the scale to somebody, a rich family that would maybe spend $1 million a year.
Yeah,
I can't imagine spending $1 million.
I'd like to have that problem, but anyways, let's just use our imagination.
Okay. But that rich family of 4 spending $1 million a year, 23% of that is $230,000 that they will take out of their pocket for buying their Learjets and their yachts and what have you.
Yeah.
But that rich family gets the same prebate.
It's still a family of 4.
Which means that their prebate covers next to nothing as far as their total tax bill goes. This rich family takes $222,428 out of their pocket to pay their $230,000 tax bill, which means that their effective tax rate is, wait for it, 22.24. They pay nearly the full 23%.
That's right.
Out of their pocket. Now, if you're one of these folks who thinks that the rich ought to be taxed at 70, 80, 90%, probably not going to sell you on the fair tax. But we do show you here, this is a very progressive system, much more so than a regular sales tax that is by definition regressive. But take note again, from the slightly better off in the middle class family, you double the spending, you more than triple the effective tax rate. So the fair tax is, go ahead, next slide here, Gabe, but the fair tax prebate, several things about it. It eliminates the regressivity normally found in sales taxes, it makes the fair tax progressive in its application. Now, progressive is a dirty word to some people, but we're not talking about a political ideology here. We're talking about just how it applies to the tax code. A progressive tax means it is indexed, it is geared so that the folks who can better afford it have a bigger tax burden.
Yep.
It completely untaxes families spending up to the poverty level. Now, you remember that the federal payroll taxes, we haven't talked about those much. The FICA tax that supports Social Security, the Medicare taxes that goes, those come out, if you're just barely getting by on minimum wage, you're going to pay those taxes.
Yeah.
The fair tax will make those taxes go away.
That's right.
And,
and they are the most regressive taxes we have right now.
Now,
Talk about regressive taxes, that's it.
Yeah, being a bit of a mathematician here, I love this next point. Go for it.
Makes it mathematical certainty that the more you spend, the higher your out-of-pocket tax rate is. It is so simple, you can't avoid it. There's no lobbyists, there's no corrupting the tax bill and so forth. The fair tax is simple. It is a sales tax, just like most of the states have right now. It's a simple sales tax. You go to the store, you buy something, or you write a check to the plumber and so forth. The fair tax is in there. And the more you spend, the more you're going to spend on the fair tax.
Yeah, we don't need the Buffett rule. Somebody who's not even Warren Buffett, the rich investor, was saying that people were making a big deal out of the fact that he paid a lower tax rate than his secretary did, who doesn't make nearly as much money as he does, because she works for wages. He gets a lot of income from other sources. But the fair tax guarantees, absolutely ironclad guarantees, that everyone pays their fair share based on their spending. With the fair tax, it would be mathematically impossible for Mr. Buffett to pay a lower tax rate than his secretary does. So we don't need that amendment anymore. It just guarantees that, and that's really cool too. That next point.
Guarantees that you take care of your family's basic needs before you pay a dime to the federal government, right?
That is a big one.
Oh, that's huge, all right? Withholding is the concept behind withholding is that you have to pay your taxes to Uncle Sam first before you can take your paycheck home and provide for your family. That is upside down or inside out or however you want to talk.
With the withholding system, we've mentioned this before, the withholding system guarantees that the government is saying to you, the wage earner, I am your highest spending priority. You will pay me before you spend a dime to support your family, because they take their little pound of flesh right off the top. The fair tax gets rid of that. With the fair tax, you get your whole paycheck. You do not have any federal withholding for taxes. You do not have your federal payroll taxes. Now, if you do have some voluntary deductions, like some insurance, family insurance, or a place I worked one time, you could make a deduction and to go to your federal credit union, some kind of savings. Those deductions are untouched. We're talking about the federal payroll taxes and federal withholding goes away with the fair tax. So you get a much bigger paycheck. Even if you still have some voluntary deductions to play with, you get a much bigger paycheck with the prebate. And
the next one,
you get the prebate in addition to bringing home more money. So it's available to all legal households in the United States. Now, the way this works, the Social Security Administration will administer the prebate. So on an annual basis, I would think that you go ahead and register for the prebate. You tell the Social Security Administration, this is my household. These are the Social Security numbers of the people that are in there, and they will cross-check it to make sure that the same number is not used in multiple places.
That's right.
And that's it. Once they know your household size, then they know what your family consumption allowance is. 23% of that is your prebate, and it is not a new entitlement. We hear this all the time.
Yeah.
People trying to say, and isn't it amazing the way some people will just say, if you repeat the same lie long enough, people will start to believe it, or they'll start to believe it themselves. The prebate is not a new entitlement, as some people who are against this thing would tell you it is. It is simply a refund of money that was collected from you at the cash register that you do not owe, because you do not owe a dime until you have spent enough money to take care of your family, i.e. your spending has reached the poverty level for your household size. It is not a new entitlement unless you consider you're entitled to spend tax-free up to the poverty level.
Well, yeah, but if you file your income taxes in April and you're going to get a refund, that's not an entitlement, is it? Your refund is your money coming back to you. It's money that you overpaid to the government. Well, that's what the prebate is, all right? It makes sure that you don't pay more than you should to the government, okay? So it's not an entitlement.
Well, you can't start charging the fair tax when somebody's spending reaches a certain level and not charge it before that level. It would be logistically impossible to figure out how much everybody has spent. So you just collect it from everybody on every eligible purchase, the retail purchase of new goods and services, and you rebate back to them what they don't owe.
Yeah.
And it remains anonymous, and it's just really cool. So go ahead and the fair tax. Where have we heard this before? Once you understand it, you'll demand it.
Yeah. So that again, I want to give Bob credit for making that PowerPoint. I think it's the best way that I've seen the prebate explained. So I really like it.
Those of you that were listening on one of the audio-only podcasts really need to get the excluded version here and follow along with what we were talking about.
Yep.
But Cindy, we thank you so much for sending in this little correspondence. And when you have questions, when you have comments, when you want to know something about the fair tax, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com is how you get a hold of us. You leave us something on our Facebook page, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
it is
hopefully
great,
this addresses all of the issues that Cindy brought to our attention. Cindy, if there's more that you need to know about, give us a call and we'll have at it a second time.
There is one issue that I've heard every once in a while. Like we had all those 4 different families up there and so forth, and like the last one, the very wealthy family that was spending $1 million a year. I hear every once in a while I say, "Well, what if they earn $2 million a year, but they're only spending $1 million?"
So what?
Yeah, none of your darn business.
Savings and investment is what stimulates the economy.
Yeah, I had well, he's not a professor, but anyways, a PhD in finances explained to me once, savings is called deferred spending. All right, savings and investment is deferred spending. It's going to be spent at some point. It might be next week, it might be next year, it might be next decade, but it will be spent.
It might be spent by their heirs if it's passed down to them.
Exactly.
I mean, it eventually gets there.
So, and savings is good. When you put money in savings or you invest it someplace, that means it's available for businesses to want to expand. And we've seen how businesses are expanding the last 18 months here. Okay, you want to see businesses expand, get rid of the income tax and get that noose from around their neck and watch businesses go wild. I mean, you'll have so many jobs. We'll be begging for people to come into this country, all right, to take these jobs and we're starting to see that now. We're starting to have a shortage of employees in certain sectors, all right? Wait till the fair tax takes effect. It'll be really, really good. And wages will go up because when you compete for workers, you have to pay them more. If it's just the way it is.
Yeah,
so,
I love the description, rocket fuel for the economy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the fair tax would be. We got about a little less than 3 minutes left in this episode. You got time to tell folks about the logo store again one more time.
Yeah, the FAIRtax logo store. These little things, all right, we talked about in the last episode how...
Take them to your candidate's town hall and go...
Oh, yeah. Boom. Yep. FAIRtax logo store. The FAIRtaxlogostore.org. FAIRtaxlogostore.org. You can go there and you can get these pins. These are very good for attracting attention. My wife wears these on the strap of her purse, and they do get attention. All right. When you go to order a bunch of these pens, and when you go out to dinner and so forth, and you sign the check, leave the pen in the restaurant. All right. Somebody's going to see this thing. Hey, I've heard about this fair tax, real tax reform. There's a website, too. I ought to find out more about this,
With a palm card or a prebate card.
Yep. The palm cards, lots of good information, concise, but you can order a bunch of these things. Order a few hundred of these, and then and pass them out. Pass them out at work if you don't get in trouble. Pass them out at church. Pass them out wherever you can, And then all the stuff that we've been talking about today, the prebate card, there's these neat little business card size, we call them the prebate cards and so forth, and you can buy these. You could buy a couple dozen or a couple hundred of these and pass them out because they have basic information about the fair tax on one side and the prebate schedule, and people are going to see, oh, I've got a family of 5 here that, holy cow, I'm going to get $714 a month. We were using the family of 4, 2 adults, 2 kids, but this has everything single, 1 adult up to 7. And actually, if it goes up to 7 dependents, but if you've got more than that, it says for each additional dependent, you get this much more in your prebate. So you can customize, look on the back of this little card and see exactly what your prebate would be. You can get shirts, you can get hats, you can get jackets, you can get travel mugs. Go to FairtaxLogoStore.org and just look at all the good stuff they have there. Help us promote the FairTax. Get the word out there, make sure so that when people see this logo, they say, oh yeah, I heard about that. That's a good deal.
Yep. Yeah. Tell them about the only streaming video program on a weekly basis about
That's right.
FairTax. FairTax
this is it,
Radio,
folks.
Here on Excluded TV. Steer people to Excluded TV. There's some really good stuff in there. And we are out of time, Moran. So, again, we made it. Hopefully, we answered all the problems and the questions about the prebate. Again, if you've got something, a subject you'd like us to address here on FairTax Power Radio, get a hold of us, the FairtaxGuys@gmail.com, or leave us a comment on our Facebook page. Until next time, we are the FairTax Guys. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
Reminding you the FairTax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Oh, these income tax forms are way too complicated. There's got to be a better way. Who are you?
We're the FairTax Guys.
We've got a big solution for you.
What's that?
It's the FairTax. Completely eliminates the federal income tax system as we know it. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns ever, no more IRS. All gone. And I guarantee you, once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Yeah.